Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Mulholland, and I am the Director of Learning and HR Compliance for the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. We want to thank you all for joining us this morning for this very exciting and timely webinar. We're all experiencing some hiring issues during this post-pandemic climate. Chris Dotson, whom I have had the pleasure of working with in the past, is here to provide us some strategies and how we can immediately implement these strategies into our hiring processes. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Chris, but before I do, I would like to mention that when we worked together at the Eastern Michigan University, he was very integral in revamping our entire talent acquisition process. So in addition to his expertise in talent acquisition, he also has a very strong background and passion around learning and organizational development. Please note that we will be taking questions via the chat box throughout the webinar, and we will pause at certain points and answer those questions. And if we don't get to all of them, we will make sure that we get back with you. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Chris Dotson.
Thank you so much, Amy. Pleasure to be here today. A little bit about me, as Amy said, I've been working at Eastern Michigan for the last 5 years. I've been in the human resource space for, it's been 7 or 8 years. Before that, I worked for 15 or so years as a restaurant manager, both in QSR and full service environments at a general manager level. So a lot of experience with running a business, if you'll say so. Managing P&Ls, doing a lot of staffing, recruiting, retention, and really just fell in love with leadership development. And so that's a lot of what I spend my time doing now. I'm a strengths-based leadership coach. I work a lot with growth-minded leaders who want to really maximize their own potential and the potential of their teams and organizations. I really work with leaders to align their unique talents and goals to help them thrive in life and in business. When we think about zooming out and what we're hoping to accomplish today, my hope is that we can share some tips and some actionable items so that your businesses can run more smoothly. At the end of the day, I want life to be easier for you. I want you to be more profitable. I want you to be able to enjoy your life outside of work and not feel like you have to be hands in the business all the time. And a big part of doing that is hiring great people, right? Hiring great people and then being able to create an environment where they're going to want to stay. So let's have some fun over the next 55 minutes or so. And please, again, as questions you have them, please use the chat. I have a bunch of stuff to share, but if there's specific things you want to get out of today, I'd invite you to please ask those questions as we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, awesome. So, Amy, are you seeing my screen that's got the full slides on them, the full size slide?
I am not seeing the full size slide.
Okay, something's a little different. I need to switch my screen on here, see if I can figure that out real quick. Let's try this. Ta-da, success?
Yes, success.
Wonderful. We got to roll with the punches here. Me and Amy were just talking about that. All right, so let's jump in. Hiring strategies for the modern workforce. So our purpose here today, we want to increase the quality of hiring and retention practices for your business, work on improving and increasing the visibility of your employer brand, right? If we're doing all these great things, that's wonderful, but if nobody knows about it, it only goes so far. And we want to work on increasing organizational resourcefulness and uncovering new talent and building that employer brand. Work on building some skill here today. All right, so our outcomes, we're going to learn how to create and market your employer value proposition, learn how to design an interview process with a focus on an excellent applicant experience. It really is important to hone in on how can we make this a great experience for people. So whether we hire them during this time or not, they walk away and say, wow, that business, they have it together. This is a place that I would want to work for in the future. I tell the folks in my network, hey, these people are doing the right things over here. There's something to pay attention to. And lastly, rethinking how we're going to look at uncovering talent in 2023. We've got a complicated time with hiring. It's been a place where it's been hard to find people. Now all of a sudden layoffs are starting to get into it. So things are starting to maybe change a little bit, that dynamic a little bit, but it's just, it's fluid all the time. So we'll want to think about how can we be thoughtful about uncovering talent that might be right underneath our own noses. All right, so our agenda for today, we'll do a quick welcome, our purpose and inclusion, focus on employer brand again, and again, that meaningful interview process. All right, $1 trillion, big number, right? Well, that's what US businesses are losing every year due to voluntary turnover. So people just choosing to move on and work somewhere else. The cost of replacing individual employee can range anywhere from 1/2 to 2 times the employee's annual salary, right? So if somebody's a $50,000 employee for you, $25,000 to $100,000 of potential impact on your business. That's a huge number, right? So a big part of the focus is on retention. It's also on hiring people that make sense for your business, right? We'll talk a little bit today about culture fit and culture add, and what that means for sourcing good talent. All right, so quick kickoff activity here. I'd love for you to share if there's something you're hoping to get out of today, and also a great piece of hiring advice that maybe you have or someone else has shared with you previously. I'm here to share tips and ideas myself, but again, I want to make sure that I'm focusing on things that are going to be helpful for you. But also, I'm just one person here. There's a bunch of you here that have some great ideas to share related to hiring. You know, I'm not the only authority on expertise related to hiring. So if you've got some ideas or some things you're thinking about getting out of today, you know, please take a moment here to share them in the chat with the group. Give you all a minute. It's okay if we're being shy. We just want to keep moving, but I'll give you a moment to see if there's anything we want to put in there. I like that. I like that culture fit question. I'm a big believer when you're designing interview questions to think about what are those questions related to your culture and your core values, and really how do you pull those out? So being really intentional about thinking, do we have core values established? If not, something from a strategic planning aspect you may want to consider. And once you have those, established, and we have those types of behaviors that we're expecting out of our folks, let's make sure that we're asking questions that relate well to that. So Amy, thank you for throwing that in there. I'll continue to keep an eye on the chat as we go. So if more things come in, I'll be happy to add some context to any thoughts anyone shares. All right, let's keep it moving. Your employee value proposition. So for those of you who may not know what this is, it's a comprehensive set of rewards, benefits, and opportunity that employer offers to its employees in exchange for their skills, experience, and performance. It's really the total value that they receive in exchange for their work, both tangible and intangible pieces. So you think about those tangible pieces, right? Things like comp and benefits, intangible, your culture that they walk into. What is it like? What does it feel like when I walk into your place of work? Is it a place that I, as an employee, find energizing? Or is it something where maybe it's not as good of a fit, right? And that may depend very much on the type of work that you all do. So it's going to be different depending on the scope of the work that you do and the type of atmosphere that you're trying to create. But really, it's effective when it really helps people to want to join and then also stay with your organization. So what are some of those contents that we're going to think about? Compensation, this is a core one. Certainly people do make decisions based on compensation. There are pieces where people are like, well, it's not about how much money you make. Money is always a big part of the conversation, but somebody's maybe not going to leave for a $5,000 or $10,000 difference. They might leave for 20 or 30 if some of these other things are in place for them. So benefits is another one. Really, especially with the emerging workforce and millennials and Gen Z, being able to think about these well-being pieces, the wellness that you're offering, opportunities to really thrive in their full life. Is really, really important to folks. Retirement benefits is a big one that I sell at EMU. We give people 9% here at EMU, which is a huge number. So even though we may be a little lower on the actual compensation, I can really sell that as part of our benefits as well too. So those are types of things to think about. Another big one, we talk about 5 drivers of well-being. One of the big ones related to the career side is opportunities for growth and development. We hear this more now than ever. So really being able to create those training opportunities for our employees is really, really important. And really being able to help them map and grow. It's like, hey, here's where I am in my career. Having that discussion with your employee about where do you want to go, right? Where do you see yourself a year from now, 2 years, 5 years from now, right? And then think about how can we give them assignments in their job or projects they can participate in. They're going to help them to build towards that. That also helps with coaching and giving feedback. Hey, we want to get better in this area, right? You mentioned this is a goal of yours. Now, how can we help you to get here? Here's some feedback that I have, right? So now it's not just about, you delivering corrective feedback, which sometimes is uncomfortable. It's when you're aligning it and able to align it to where this person's hoping to go with their career. It makes that much more digestible, both for the person giving and receiving the feedback. Some good comments from Amy in the chat right now. We want to get ways to retain people longer and get great talent. So yes, we're talking about that retaining piece a little bit right now. Big piece of that retention for you here is really thinking about, right, those one-on-ones. The manager drives 70% of the engagement and satisfaction an employee has. So really having great relationships and building those up, which starts with really good one-on-ones and upskilling your managers on how to have those effective type of conversations. One of my favorites you can do research on that Gallup recommends doing when somebody first gets started, and then minimally once a year from there, is a role and relationship orientation conversation. So we talk about the role, we establish things, make sure it's really crystal clear on what success looks like in this role. And then we work on aligning that person's personal mission and purpose and what they want to get out of their career and this role. And how can we really think about what they're doing in their day-to-day, their quarterly goals, the annual goals of the company, really aligning those pieces together. For hiring, we interview with companies using the STAR method. Yeah, STAR method's a great format for thinking about how to do interviews. So situation, task, what was the behavior you made and what was the end result. So that's a great way to get things out. So it's not like, what would you do in this situation? It's tell me about a time when ... right? So then you're actually asking them, right, about what past performance they've done, because past performance is a great predictor of future performance. So that STAR method is a great way to think about that. So we'll talk about interview questions in a little bit more detail later. Okay. So again, keep the questions coming in as you'd like, and you're welcome to submit those directly to Amy or put them in the general chat as well. Okay. All right. Also, apparently there's a way to use the Q&A as well. So there's a Q&A function that you're going to see at the top, which is outside of chat. Okay, I do see, yes, the Q&A. So thank you for that. So it looks like Q&A might be the way to go as opposed to doing the chat. I now have the Q&A up. So if you want to submit your questions there, that's a great place to do it, since it looks like we're getting feedback that the chat's disabled. All right, other contents of the EVP. We talked about the intangible pieces. One of these is that work environment, right? What is that culture? What is our values, our mission? And a big one now for employees now is, what's your corporate social responsibility? What is the organization doing to give back to the local community? Or if you're more broadly based, maybe more global community, right? But what are we really doing to give back? How are we serving in different ways? It may be that you're a nonprofit and it's very clear what that is. It may be that you're a for-profit making widgets, but there's certain things you're doing, in the community to be helpful. So, slowing down a little bit here, thinking about the values and the mission, it's really important to have these outlined. I know with a lot of small and mid-sized companies, we don't always have those. It's kind of more unspoken, or if we do have them, it's not something that we're thinking about all the time. But it's one of the things as leaders, as CEOs, really important to be emphasizing and talking about these, and then recognizing those who are displaying those values. You think about that question of do I promote the person who's my top salesperson, or somebody who's a really good salesperson and they're also exuding the values, versus that high performer who's maybe more individualistic in nature, right? The better leader might be the person who's more of the team player. So something to think about when you're thinking about how you promote as well too in your work environment. Work-life balance, a little bit of an outdated term. It's more of a work-life integration, especially with so much hybrid work being done these days. But being able to be thoughtful about how can we be flexible with work. You may be an environment where you have to have people there 5 days a week. And that's the nature of the work. If that's the case, and you actually have to be there because you work with people in person, then that's true. If you can afford people to get some flexible time where they're able to do some work from home, you're going to see good results. The current results are saying that the best number is 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, or 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, as far as maximizing your engagement of employees. And then when you maximize engagement, right, you tend to get more productivity. You see higher levels of profitability. You see higher levels of retention, right? They're all connected through that connective tissue. So having that time in the office together to build the culture, and at the same time, that flexibility to be able to work from anywhere. Some people just want to get a jump start on their weekend, and I can head out Thursday night after work and I can work from home or from my hotel room on a Friday, and then be able to get my weekend started from there. So just being flexible with that. With that, you do have to do some training for your managers on how to do that and manage in a hybrid environment. So anyway, a lot of pieces to that one. So we could unpack that later if anybody wants to reach out and have conversations. A hot topic these days. And then recognition and rewards. We talked about how you promote people based on behaviors related to your values and your mission, but really thinking about how do we recognize the contributions of employees. So really, this is kind of that holistic approach to the employee value proposition. It's not just about comp and benefits. There's a lot of other pieces that go into that. All right, let's keep moving. So you can type this in the chat if you'd like, although it sounds like it may be disabled. So use the Q&A if you'd like, or just think about this more rhetorically. When you think about this employee value proposition differentiator, I'd like you to start thinking about what do you have or what do you offer that might differentiate yourself from your competition, right? So if you're competing for the same type of worker with other folks who are in your market, what really differentiates you? If I was an employee coming to work for your company, that's probably something I would ask you. I would want to know what that differentiator is. So if you have one, great, you can share it. If not, just think about that. And if you're unsure about it, maybe it's time to start thinking about, how we get in to start living that and then marketing it, right? Because this next piece, right? Would your current employees agree with this as a differentiator, right? Would they agree with it? You might feel that is the case. I'd be curious, to know if you survey people or even talk about this during one-on-ones with employees or in focus groups, would they agree with it? The other piece of this is, does the marketplace know? Is this something that we just more internally know about, but maybe we're not marketing it enough so that people really know this is what we're known for, right? They might be able to log up or log in, see resources for you on like a Glassdoor or through Google reviews. That's one informal way to do it, but are there other things we can do? So let's talk about how we might think about that. So one thing, again, benchmark your competition. You can do things like salary surveys to see where you are as far as whether you're leading the market, meeting the market, or lagging the market. So there's multiple different survey options you can look at for that. Sometimes you can just go on to career sites of your competitors and see there. You can pay for different organizations who do it. American Society of Employers out of the Novi area is one of the known ones that you can use. And also just doing your industry research, right? What are people getting paid in these positions in my region? Here's a free interview questions. It's one of my favorite ones that I have people or ask people to think about asking when they're going into the interview process. But what would excite you about joining this company and keep you on for a significant period of time, right? The whole thing about exit interviews, and I intentionally left that off because by the time somebody's leaving, it is too late. They are leaving. Doesn't mean they might not boomerang, but why not catch people on the front end, find out what's really going to get them excited about being here, right? And then see if that's a need that we can meet. All right, I got a question that came in. So when a new hire comes into the company, the corporate officer, district manager has a lot of interaction with the new hire. Also, we have an interactive training period. I love to hear that. That touch base at the beginning, that onboarding piece is just so crucial, right? Because when they're first getting started as a new employee, right, not only are they having to balance learning all their new job functions and how we do it at X company, but they have to build relationships too, right? They need to have that point person. So somebody that they can just go to and say, I don't know about this, right? That relationship building thing is sometimes we skip over, especially as, hey, I get it. Oftentimes you're short staffed, which is why you're hiring for this position in the first place. Hey, we've had explosive growth. We're hiring 10 new people, or this key person just left, and now I've got to fill their position. Now I'm doing their job, and I'm hiring for this job. What do we, all of these things that kind of just creep into your mind, but you really got to slow down, be with them. So I think that's really a great comment to say. We have that interactive training period and we have a focused time with that district manager. Okay, thanks, Kristen, for that feedback about the chat being disabled for you too. Stay interviews. There's some really great questions out here. I just pulled a couple of them here, but why wait until people leave? Why not do stay interviews? What keeps you here? Sit down with your employees and ask them these types of questions. What keeps you here? What contributes most to your job satisfaction? So this is going to do a couple things for you. One, it's going to give you insight on creating opportunities for growth and development, right? Or environments where this person personally thrives. It's also, if you can gather some data, you can find themes of what do people who choose to work here love about working here, right? And then lastly, this employee survey piece. So giving people that anonymous ability to provide you feedback is really powerful. And then potentially hosting focus groups with your teams to say, based on this feedback we've gotten from stay interviews and from these employee surveys, here's some of the feedback we've gotten about the things that you love. Here are some of the things where maybe you're having issues and struggling, right? Let's have some conversation about how we can continue to build off of the positives, right? We don't ignore those and just go straight to the gap analysis and focus on the negatives, but also the areas where we could be better. Tell us about it. Let's talk about it. It doesn't mean you're committing to doing it all, but we're listening. And then we have to circle back afterwards and say, okay, here's what we were able to do based on your feedback. Here's some feedback you gave. We're not going to be able to do something with that right now, but this is important. We're going to put this over here and we can maybe come back to it at a later time. This is another one of those key drivers of engagement and retention is, does my opinion matter at work? Only 1 in 3 employees strongly agrees with that answer. But those who do strongly agree, again, much higher levels of engagement and retention. So these are all like different places of feedback that you can build into your workspaces for your employees to give you feedback. Okay. All right, marketing. Again, so we've talked about that internal piece, right? Let's look internally what we're doing. Now let's think about externally. Once we've found what this looks like, how do we market it in a way that's effective? So we've done our research. We've seen where we're strong in comparison to our competition. We've talked to our employees who have been here for a while, who love working here. And now we found out what they love about working here. We're really in tune with that. Now let's talk about creating that marketing piece to share with the world so that we can really celebrate that and get the right types of folks applying to your jobs. So first, we have to have a clear message, clear, concise, authentic. Talk about the values of your organization. Talk about those unique benefits. Talk about what sets you apart. Talk about what those internal folks are saying about what they love. And I love this piece about the social media. It talks about just that. Share videos, photos, testimonials from your current employees, right? Put their headshot on it. Do a little informal interview. Get some stories about things that they just about them personally and also about professionally, what they love about the company. It gives your employees a chance to be spotlighted, right? They can then share that on their own personal social media, right? More visibility for them. They get excited. They get likes. They get comments from those in their network. And it's like, hey, wow, how cool is it that this employer is doing this? Because I'm telling you, not everybody's doing it. And it's a great opportunity to think about highlighting your employees and your brand at the same time. If you have a careers page, really important to have that information and make it visible, right? So put it on your job descriptions. Put it on the page when they first get there. Hey, here's what people love about working here. Again, a video, if you can do a short, like 1-minute video, right, from the CEO potentially, highlighting some of these great things. You could even have some of the testimonials included in there as well too. Have your core values right on your job descriptions. That's an easy takeaway if you don't have them in there to do it, right? And then be able to talk about this is how we live our core values in the interview process now. Obviously, I hope you're living them in the first place, right? We don't want to we don't want to get the cart before the horse. If it's not something we're currently doing, maybe work on doing that internal piece first, but then as part of that, build that into your whole employee life cycle. Okay. All right. Other pieces to this. When you partner with third-party recruiters, if you're not doing all your own recruiting internally, really make sure that they are doing a good job of highlighting the special things about your company, about your organization. Sometimes you're not doing it all. You've got a million things on your plate. So using a third-party recruiter, it can be a great way to do it. Just make sure that they are doing an effective job with sharing that employee value proposition on your side. If you can, attend job fairs, networking events where you can connect with people. It can be part of your elevator pitch when you talk about, what does your business do? And here's the great things that we do for our employees, right? Depending on the type of atmosphere, right? If it's we're trying to get new business, right? We're going to focus a little bit more on the business side, strategic plan piece. If we're focusing on more of a recruitment type of event, as far as employees, right? Have that same type of pitch in your back pocket, which is coming from that clear, concise messaging from your EVP. Other piece on here are your referral programs. Use your employees as referrals to promote that employee value proposition. It's a great way to get candidates. And if they love working there, they'll tell people about it. You might incentivize it through some different ways financially. Gift cards, people love those for referring people to your business. Okay. So I'm going to pause here for a moment. Feel free to use the Q&A here. What questions might you have about the employee value proposition? Is there anything that you could use a little more further explanation on? So that's the first half here. And the second piece is there any new clarity you now have about employee value propositions and what it might mean for your organizations? So I'll pause for 30 seconds here and see what comes in. All right, for a state interview, would it be valuable to ask what's something that makes you think about leaving? Yeah, I think you could frame that and ask, it's one of those things where, hey, we love having you here. Is there anything that would take away, right, from your experience here, or has taken away from your experience here? As a strengths-based person, I always like to start with the positive, right? What are the great things that are happening here? And how can we continue to build off of that? But I'm not somebody who says ignore those areas where, things are not working out. I do think that we want to make sure that we're focused on what are we doing well and doing more of that on purpose first. But I think it's a good idea to think about where do we have gaps? Don't ignore the gap piece. So yes, great question. Definitely, I would say it's helpful to think about, hey, there's anything that we're not doing well. What do we need to do to make sure this continues to be a great place for you to work? Or if it hasn't been great so far, what do we need to do differently to make it that for you? So yes, absolutely. I think it's a good way to frame that as well. Good question. Okay. Feel free to keep those coming in. I'm going to keep moving here. All right, another anecdotal one here, if you'd like. Anecdotal is not the right word. This is another one. If you just want to keep it to yourself, go ahead, or if you want to put it in the chat. I kind of like putting them in writing if you can, right? Because once you put it in action, you put it in words and you commit to it, it's more likely you're going to do it. I'll give a personal example. I was talking with a colleague about how I'm trying to promote my brand. I said, you know what? I am going to go ahead and apply to speak at the Michigan SHRM conference this year. And I just found out yesterday we got there. If I didn't make that initial commitment, I might not have done it. But I committed to a friend and colleague that I was going to do it. And anyway, excited that it happened. It's going to be a cool opportunity to speak. So anyway, just think about an action that you could take to think about improving your EVP and if it already exists, how you might go about marketing it. So feel free to take a note on that. If you'd like to share with the group, please feel free to do that as well. All right, another one of my favorite pieces here. So we've talked about how we think about creating a great experience as far as getting people to apply, how we market it. Now we've got them, they're excited. They're like, oh, this company looks like they got it together. I've read great things about them. They're doing great things on their social media to promote their employees. Okay, I'm in the door. You've got me excited. I'm a great candidate, a great prospect. Now let's talk about how we live a great experience during the interview process. So a little bit of data for you data-driven folks like me, guilty, love data. So why? Let's start with the why of the applicant experience. 83% of candidates say a negative interview experience can change their mind over a company role they had once been interested in, right? So we've created that excitement. Well, if we have a dud during the interview, it can completely flip that. However, if we have a positive experience, like, I didn't really know, I'd never heard of this company before, I wasn't sure what to expect. They have a really good interview experience, right? Really good chance that they're going to think about coming to work for you. And this is an interesting one too, right? 77% saying the interview stage influences their decision to join, with just over half identifying the meeting with their manager as the most vital part. So you might have different stakeholders who are involved in the interview process. You might just personally do it yourself. If you're the owner and you're doing the interviews, I think it's great for you to be involved. If there's a direct person that's actually going to be supervising them, though, the ability to have one-on-one time with them is really, really important. 70% again of the variance in engagement and satisfaction is driven by the direct supervisor. They're also the person who has the most impact on whether or not that person is going to stay at the organization or not. So we want to make sure that there's transparency there so that they know what is this person's leadership style, how are they going to help me to develop? Because if that doesn't fit with what they're looking for, your chances of turnover and or an employee who's just unhappy when they get there is going to go up significantly. All right, a couple other things. We want to make sure that we're seeing these folks as people, right? Get it that we're busy. You may have other good applicants that you're talking to, but really treating them with dignity and respect and respecting their time is important. These folks may very well have full-time jobs, right? They're coming to your business. They're taking an hour and a half, 2 hours out of their day to come spend here. They've got to make an excuse for their current boss and or maybe take PTO to do this, right? So they're really heavily considering you. And we should treat them with that same level of respect. Sometimes we can be guilty of, and I've seen it in interviews that I've sat in on, where this person, it just doesn't feel warm, right? It just feels kind of cold, like they're underneath the microscope, and it's more of a science experiment. Like, prove to us why you should get to work here, and they do. But it's also on your end a two-way street. We should be proving to them as the employer why this is a great place to work, right? And so part of this is just bringing the human element and that mutual respect piece to the process. So being responsive, communications, being realistic about the timelines and clear on job descriptions. Job descriptions can be confusing. Sometimes there's so much information there. Sometimes it's helpful to just boil it down to the nuts and bolts. Here's what you're going to be doing on the day-to-day. Here's what high performers look like in this job, right? This is what they're doing to be successful. So really just clearing, making it ultra clear. And then also it's, hey, we posted this job. We reached out, it's been 2 weeks. We're starting to pull the interview, we reach out. We want to do a first interview end of next week. We set up that interview. Let's get it done the end of next week. And then let them know at that time, here's when you can expect to hear back from us for a second interview, potentially, if you're doing 2 interviews, right? But the point is just being really clear, right? We want to make sure that we're being representative of a good experience in the interview process. Because otherwise they're going to say, it's kind of a mess with the interview process. Is that what it's going to be like when I work here? Which is not always fair, right? Not all of you are HR professionals. In fact, most of you are not. So being able to be expert recruiters and designing these is not necessarily your background. And in that case, that might be why you hire somebody externally to support you with it. But if not, just think about this. Okay, this is something I need to set up just like a project plan for anything else, right? Here are my milestones of what I'm hoping to do. I'm posting it here. I want to get them hired here. Here's what I'm projecting to do, reviewing of resumes. Here's when I'd like to have first round interviews scheduled and conducted, second round conducted, offer out, new person starting, right? So just think about it like a project plan. This is not something that's in your wheelhouse necessarily. Also, hey, this is advertising for you. We go back to that marketing piece. People share their experiences with others. And for those of you, in the business space here, which I know a lot of you are, what's the old adage? If people have a bad experience, they tell 11 people. If people have a good experience, they might tell one other person, right? So if the experience is not great, they're going to tell people about that. And it's just a way you don't want to be reflected, whether they're a great candidate or not. We want them to be talking positively about your company. And who knows, they may not be a great candidate today, but maybe 2 or 3 years from now, they go and get experience elsewhere, finish up an education. All of a sudden it's like, okay, you know what, we saw potential here. They came back. There's a lot that they liked about us. Now maybe it's a fit further down the road. And just like anything, again, first impressions with any relationship are vital, right? A lot of your great relationships started with a positive first impression. So we want to make it positive. So that's the why. Let's talk about the how. Just like we're expecting the person interviewing to be ready for the interview. You too, as a hiring member, a person on a hiring committee, if you're doing individual interviews, you should also be prepared. So it's one of these things where, hey, okay, you're walking in, I'm now just looking at your interview for the first time, or I haven't looked at it in 2 weeks, right? We want them to come in and say, hey, what was it about our company that excited you to come in? If we're saying, what if they turned around and asked the same question? Well, what about my resume, without looking at it, excited you about me being an employee here, right? So just kind of think about it as a two-way thing here. So part of the reason I say it is that, and the other reason is this: you get busy with your job, you get busy with life, right? You originally set up this interview, it's been a week, it's been 2 weeks, you're managing the day-to-day operation of your job. I get it. There's a million other things that you're doing. This is a +1 that you're doing during this time. So my thought would be, from a process standpoint, block 15 or 30 minutes before the interview, or the day before the interview, to just say, okay, I'm going to go back in and reorient. Well, who is this person? What did I like about them? What were some of the key things that really excited me about this person, or was a reason why I thought they might be a strong option for us? Just do that as kind of a re-review, right? Because it's like, I get the being busy. I think sometimes we just miss that comeback piece for how we can come back to it and really be thoughtful as we're jumping in on it. Interview questions. So I'm a big believer in doing a blended approach based on values and competencies. So values being, again, going back to your core values and designing interview questions around those. If you've got a value based on inclusion, as an example, right? We should have interview questions geared towards that value of inclusion. We want to hear if these people truly are more inclusive, or if they're not, right? So we want to be able to hear examples to that. Competencies on the other, and there's lots of different competency frameworks you can look at out there. I use the Lominger competencies in my work, but it gives you a list of 67 different competencies that you can refer to on things like action oriented. It gives you like a definition of what the competence is, and then gives you some interview questions you can ask based on those. But if we're saying this position is an action oriented role, and this is one of the most important competencies, let's ask questions based on that competency. So what I do, from a, again, standpoint of deciding what competencies, here's a way to think about it. Any position, whether it's a frontline service worker up to, your director of marketing or your CEO, there are 8 to 12 or so competencies you can boil down to that are just the most important for a specific role. So really work on honing in on what are those 8 to 12, and then create interview questions based on those. So you can even think about, I don't know how many, necessarily positions you have in your company, but you might even start thinking about, as a project over time, to think about, what are those competencies we want to have for this role, right? And then you're able to hire to those competencies. You're able to do reviews based on those competencies, right? And it's really going to create more role clarity, right, for employees, which is, again, one of those 5 key drivers of engagement for employees. And then lastly, just anticipating questions candidates might have and prepare to answer them fully and honestly, right? We talked about the hybrid, how many days from home do I get to work, right? What are the current challenges that, the organization is facing right now? What are the things that really differentiate you, as an employer? So just start to think about what you would want to know if you were brand new to this company and you knew very little, or only what you might know from looking at your website. All right, now, once we get into the interview, right? I touched on this a little bit earlier, but we want to make this a humanistic experience. So be open, warm, wear a smile. Again, express that gratitude for them taking the time to meet with you. One of the things that I commonly see is we hire the person who's the A+ interviewer. And honestly, a lot of times, the person who's best interviewing is the best at the job. But just because somebody's a really good interviewer, it might be that they go on a lot of interviews. It also might be that they're just more naturally comfortable on stage in front of people. If this is a job where you're on stage in front of people that you're hiring for, then evaluating based on that makes sense. If this is going to be somebody who's going to be more of an introverted working on your finance team, maybe that's a little less important, right? So just thinking about that is important. Some people just need a little bit more time to warm up in it, and they need a little bit more time to grow trust and feel comfortable, which is a big reason why I love the 2 interview approach, because it gives people that, hey, I got to know this person a little bit the first time. I feel a little bit more comfortable. I can't tell you how often I see it with hiring committees in situations where we have a top 3 that get that second round interview, and we're thinking it's going to be the person who did the best the first round, and that person who's in that 3rd spot, right? It's like that horse at the Kentucky Derby who's coming up in the rear, and they're just that one who they just explode at the end. It's like, wow, we didn't get to see everything in that first interview, right? It's more data for you for that second interview. It also gives those folks who may need a little bit more natural time to warm up the chance to do so. So there's my soapbox thought on that. And then lastly, explain the reason for the vacancy. People are just typically curious about that. Hey, we've had expansion. Hey, you know what? We had some turnover in this area. You know, maybe there's some things we need to improve. Hey, here's what the reason for the vacancy is. It might just be, hey, this person left for another career opportunity. It was an advancement opportunity. We're thrilled for them. You know, again, but that says a lot of it about you, right? As an employer, right? Hey, cool for them. They knew that this person kind of hit their peak at this position. We didn't have a promotional opportunity for them. They moved on to something that was a nice option for growth for them, right? So again, all things that can help build the brand for you. This is where we can talk about that employee value proposition, but being an ambassador for your organization, talk about your mission, values, talk about your leadership style, talk about how this might show up for the employee, right? So they can really make a judgment, because we want them to make a decision that this is a good fit for them. Your company is not a good fit for anybody, and it shouldn't be a good fit for absolutely everybody, right? If you're a hyper competitive environment, you know, where it's like, hey, you know, top sales, top dog, you know, you want that, you know, which is great. In a lot of cases, that's what you want. Then that's what you should be looking for. If this is more of a collaborative team environment, then maybe that person who really is more about out for me first isn't the right person, right? So it's about dialing those in, thinking about your leadership style, and really being able to describe that so this person can make a good decision. Because the last thing we want is 3 months down the road for you to be hiring again. We want this person to be around for a while. Okay. So we talked about the difference, you know, these benefits. Here's a couple examples of what you have here, your differentiators, your development opportunities. And what are your favorite things about working for this company? You know, what are things you're really proud about? And again, if you do those day interviews, you do those surveys, you even just informally ask people, you know, what are the things that you enjoy most about working here? Those can be great things for you to be able to share as well. But again, balance that with giving a realistic preview. You don't want to be on full on sales mode. I heard somebody once say that when they identify somebody as a superstar, I'm going to try now to convince you why you shouldn't join my organization. You know, we work really long hours here. You know, there are times where you got to be, you know, at work from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. That's not for everybody, right? So it's one of those things where we want to be really honest about what the deliverables are. What are those current and future challenges? So that again, they can make an informed decision. So it's a both and situation with selling the really great things and the things that, you know, are challenging. You know, hey, we're in a little bit of a tumultuous time. You know, we need somebody to help us really come in and put systems in place. We're a growing company. Before, we were just able to kind of shoulder all the work with the 5 or 10 of us. Now we're at a point where we really need to be able to document things. We're growing and we need to be able to have standardized best practices in place. We're looking for somebody who can help us get there. For some people, they're going to say, awesome, I would love to be a part of that. Other people might say, nope, I really would just rather walk in and have the playbook there that I can just come in and execute, right? So again, you're going to be finding maybe different people, maybe depending on different phases of where your business is. All right, after we're done with the interviews, again, this timely and ongoing communication is really important. Set clear timelines, keep communicating throughout the process. And if you have to deviate, things happen. Hey, had a big thing happen at work. I got called out of town on business. We're gonna have to push back this second or this decision week. We're still interested. You know, we'll be in touch soon. Okay, things like that, having people under understanding. But we don't want to leave people in the, you know, in the dark. You know, what's going on here. And if they're a really great candidate, they might be a great candidate for somebody else too. So just remember that too. They might be looking elsewhere, and not just at your company. After we've decided who we're going to hire, they've accepted the position. We're excited. We got the next great person to join our organization. Reach out once or twice, right? Answer any questions they might have. Express excitement for them joining the team. Sometimes people get cold feet, right? Or they get a counteroffer from their current employer, and they're thinking about staying. It's like, hey, you know, you were thinking about leaving that company for a reason. You know, here's what you said you were excited about it. We're excited for you. We cannot wait to get you going here, right? And share what they can expect during that first week. We had that person earlier who mentioned, I don't think we had a name on there, but how they really talk about and have time for them to spend time with their district manager, and also that interactive training period, right? Really talk about what's going to go into both the pieces related to your core functions on the job, and also that relationship building with colleagues. Give them time, right? And you think about growing a team or an individual, growing how comfortable they are, right? The foundational pillar always, I'm not an always or never guy. I'm in everything in between. This is an always thing. It is growing relationships first, right? We need to have that foundational piece of growing relationships and trust so people can get comfortable, right? Before they can start really bringing their full selves, feeling like I can speak up in meetings. I can disagree, and that's okay, right? I need to know that it's safe to do that. And before I can even know that it's safe to do it, I need to know that I've got some folks in here who I can trust. Okay. All right, another thing for you to think about, again, feel free to share your answers in the Q&A, but I'd like you to think about what's one thing based on interviewing that you might be rethinking related to your interviews. Or if you have a question at this point, another great time to ask a question. But what's one new thing you are thinking about the way you conduct interviews currently, and how you might make an adjustment there? I'll keep an eye on that Q&A, but keep moving so we can make sure we get to everything else. All right, unique talent pools. It is an interesting time for hiring. A lot of folks have, seen the fact that we've had record levels of low unemployment. That's starting to change with some of the layoffs that have started to occur, more broadly. But we need to get more thoughtful just generally about how can we tap into some different pools. So I've listed some different ones here that you might want to think about. Working with local veteran organizations in your area is a great place to think about starting. There are some people out there that are doing tremendous work and really are looking for placement for veterans. Again, often have just unbelievable skills related to discipline and leadership that they can bring to your organization. There's a lot of different disability resource center groups around the state to take advantage of as well. It's interesting. Sometimes we just overlook this population altogether, but it's really can be great because they can bring in a new perspective or innovative solutions for how you can address unique challenges. I've met with some of these organizations, and some of the ideas they have are just incredible, right? They just really can bring a fresh perspective about how we might rethink things. There's one group I was talking to about how they rethought the way that they were doing packaging based on this color coding system that just increased their efficiency significantly and saved them tons of money. And it all started working with some of these folks who have different types of neurodiversity and disabilities. The aging workforce, right? This is actually one of the biggest growing demographics in the workplace, right? There are people who get that retirement age, but they're still looking to work part-time, and they've got a lot to offer, right? Based on a lot of experience that they have. I went to see the head of all of SHRM National, Johnny C. Taylor, speak at the Detroit Economic Club a couple months ago, and he was talking about how this is one of the biggest areas of growth over the next few years is going to be that older population of folks who are retiring or are retired coming back into the workforce, partly because there's a shortage of workers, right? Because we have really low levels of unemployment, and there's just a gap there. But also there's just an interest. People who are taking care of themselves are living longer. Vitality is increasing, in addition to people being able to live longer because there's been advances in modern medicine and knowing how to take care of ourselves better, that we're just seeing people who are interested in, hey, I want to give back. I have purpose here. Different types of backgrounds. This is another one, right? I mean, we have seen folks starting to move away from this need for specific degrees in higher education. Well, I do see a ton of value in higher education. A lot of times there's other ways to get education now, maybe more so than ever before. So just looking at these different types of career paths can be positive. Criminal records, these folks oftentimes are motivated to turn their lives around. They made a mistake. but all of us have made mistakes in our life, and it doesn't mean that they're not going to be a great employee. And a lot of states are starting to move towards this ban the box piece, where they're not even allowing folks to look at criminal records, anymore as part of the initial piece with hiring. And I would suggest like taking it off your application. Do you have a criminal record? It's one of those things where you can address it during a background check anyway. And depending on what the nature of the crime is, you can make the decision on whether or not this is something that makes sense, right? But there's a lot of folks who have a lot to give. And if you get these folks in, a lot of places won't hire folks with a criminal record. You may have them for life. And then looking at some different underrepresented communities. So it might be ethnic, racial minorities, LGBTQ, or from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Some people didn't have, the same level of opportunity that others did. It doesn't mean that they're not really, hardworking and won't be great, committed employees. Going back to this culture fit versus culture ed, I know we're getting tight on time, but we're almost done here. All right, sorry, see we have another question here. Talk more about goals and give more clear picture of progressing within the company with new hires. I'll come back to that in just a moment here. So the culture fit versus culture add. I've heard this phrased a lot, and culture fit is something we've used for a while, right? We want to hire somebody who's got the right personality, values, work style that align with our existing culture. So from a value standpoint, I am aligned with this, right? We want people who are going to demonstrate and identify with the values. What you have to be really careful of with culture fit is you might just hire a bunch of people who are just like you. And that's not necessarily what you want to do, right? Because you already think like you think. What you want are people who think differently than you do, right? People are going to bring different perspectives. Some people think naturally big picture. You may be that big picture visionary. You may not be the person who wants to live in all of the details, right? And if that's the case, you might want to have people around you who have strong detail orientation. You might be somebody who really values consistency. You're great with standard operating procedures, right? You know that we need to have procedures for things. You might benefit from having somebody who's higher on the individualization side of things, right? They really are able to pick out the uniqueness in different people or what different customer needs might be to balance out those consistent processes and procedures. So all that being said, it's more of a value of the diversity and gaining that new perspective. I can give a talk later, but one of the things we look at is there's just this there's this false dichotomy that we are well-rounded as people and we're just not. We are actually really specialized and great at some things, but we're not well-rounded. Individuals are not supposed to be well-rounded. Teams are. So you want to hire folks that are going to help your team to be well-rounded based on these different types of polarities we were just thinking about. So when you're going through it, just think about that, right? We want to have them aligned to our values, but hey, what might this person be bringing that we're currently missing, right, on our team when you're going through this process? Okay. 3 things. I thought this was really brilliant. I heard this recently. When we're thinking about hiring people, sometimes we just get too hung up on exactly what's on the resume and what our qualifications and requirements are. So here are 3 things that I think you might think about. And even the clean resume might not be make or break depending on the type of role that you're hiring for, right? Some people don't have the educational background, and they may not need to have a fully professional resume. But generally speaking, a clean resume, do they have a professional interest in the field, right? Like, does this person, does it make sense that they're interviewing for a job in HR? I'm going to use myself as a personal example here. When I was working in restaurants for 15 years, it might not have made sense for me to be interviewing for jobs in HR. Although towards the end, I realized leadership development and team building is where I wanted to work, right? I wanted to work on that professional development, that strategy side, right? So what I did was I applied for school in HR, and that's when I started getting some interest from folks like, okay, there's a professional interest here. And did they cite a specific interest in the company, right, in the cover letter? If they're doing these 3 things, it might be worth a conversation, because you might be overlooking somebody who is just, hey, they might be a little bit green as far as their experience, but if they're really excited about the work that you're doing and they're interested in this, what kind of effort are they going to give to become great at their job? Right. So sometimes it's like we should think about, if we can, loosening our expectations And what's it going to hurt to have a 30-minute conversation, right? And this breeds into this next question. How do you keep track of applicants with potential you don't hire? Because even going back to those three things, maybe they don't fit today, but maybe they fit a year from now or 2 years from now, or maybe they don't fit for that director level position we were interviewing for, but they do fit for a specialist or coordinator role that might be opening up at some time in the near future. So, excuse me, think about how you keep track of that. Applicant tracking systems usually have a flagging system that you can do it if you have an applicant tracking system. If you don't, you might just keep a file of people with potential with a little bit of a note in there about what you liked about this person, right? So when you have a similar position open up, you might reach out to them in the future and say, hey, we talked, a couple of years ago about a position. We have something we think you might be interested in now, right? But sometimes we just kind of close the door on somebody who's previously said, we didn't think they were good enough at the time, so we're closing the door on them. People grow, people improve, people get better, right? You think about where you are today versus where you were 10 years ago. I think if you look back and look at your trajectory and where your skill set is, whether or not, you're an owner then, you're an owner now, you've probably grown in your competence and skill set in certain ways. My guess is these people have too, right? And they once expressed interest in your company. So just something to think about is how to keep track of those folks. All right, so this is our final reflection, and then I'll take into the questions and we'll come back to this goals question that we had. But I want you to close your eyes if you'd like to. But imagine it's 3 months from now. You're getting a steady stream of strong applicants. You're excited about the contributions of the new people you're hiring and the contributions they're making. They're starting and quickly they're making an impact. What happened to get you there? What are you doing? What are you doing to get there? What are those steps, right? And then work backwards, right? It's 3 months from now, here's where we are. What do we need to now get to that ideal future state, right? So here's the challenge I have for you based on our time here today. I'd like you to think about what's the first action you need to take this week to start building towards that future, right? Write it down. Make it visually available. Keep it in your office. Tape it to the corner of your laptop screen, wherever you're going to see it, right? If there's a whiteboard you look at every day, put it up there. Hold yourself accountable for doing that. And I'll share my contact information with you. And if you want to use me as a partner here on this goal setting, I'd love to hear about it. So I'll share my information here in a moment, but send me a ping when you did it. Hey, here's the action that I committed to taking. And here's what I did. Here's where I want to be 3 months from now, right? But again, build in that accountability for yourself. Make it available visually, write it down, and then check in with me. And if you didn't quite do it, that's okay. Say, hey, I didn't do it. Well, then I'll ask you, well, is it still important? If it is still important, okay, well, what do we need to do to get that first action taken? Is that still the right first action, right? And if so, when are we going to have it done by, right? You're kind of creating that bond, right? That psychological bond. My word is my bond. I wrote it down. I committed to Chris I was going to do it. Now I'm going to carry through with that. Okay, so when we think about this other question that we have, I know we're getting tight on time, but about goals and give a more clear picture of the progression within companies with new hires. So when I think about goals, right, this goes back to your strategic plan. I would think about where are we going to be a year from now, 3 years, 5 years from now as an organization. If we're not doing that yet, that might be a good first step for your leadership team to sit down and have some conversations about, right? Getting your mission, getting your values clear, making sure you're clear with your structure. Are we structured the right way? And then are we looking at where we want to go, right? Once you've identified that and where you want to go, it's like, now, who do we need to help us get there, right? What are those roles? What are those pieces on that org chart that can help us get to that space that we're going? Maybe it's saying, hey, we want to have a 25% growth in our market share, or we want to be the staffing firm that everybody knows in the Grand Rapids community, right? We want to be their first choice. How are we going to be number one in the minds of people in this area, right? How are we going to get there? And then we can start thinking about these individual positions and what are the goals for those? How are they going to support that, right? And then you can talk about, these are the goals that you're looking at having throughout the interview process. And you can give a picture of, as we're growing and we're doing revenue projections of how we're potentially growing, here's how your role can potentially grow with it, right? Maybe you're hiring them in as a manager. but they're going to be moving into a director VP position could open up, or they could be having direct reports that they're going to be hiring, right? So you've got to really think about this more holistically, right? And then come back to thinking about, what those types of goals might be. But even if you're not all the way there, because I know that's kind of, hey, we got to set aside a lot of time to do strategic planning if we're not doing that already, just think about, just cut it down to that individual role. What are the things that we're missing right now, within the team that would be helpful, right? And it could be from a skill set perspective. It could be from a personality perspective, right? What are we missing here that we really want to hone in on? And let's try to hire somebody who's going to bring that. But then we got to give them the culture that's going to allow them to bring that, right, to the team if it's currently missing. If it's currently missing, it might be also a reflection on what are we doing in the culture. So kind of a loaded question. Happy to talk offline about that and unpack that in a little bit more detail for you as well. So again, connect with me if you'd like. Here's my information. QR codes are here, direct links on the one side. LinkedIn, Chris Dotson Consulting. My email, which is not on here, is just chris@chrisdotsonconsulting.com. And we can share that out with the notes and the slides post meeting. But yeah, I'm happy to connect with you and talk more about hiring and retention. They're two of my favorite topics here. So I know we're 2 minutes over. Amy, can I turn it back over to you and see if there's any closing comments that you have?
Yes, absolutely. And I will be brief. Thank you very much, Chris. I can tell you that I personally have walked away enlightened and learned some strategies that can be immediately applied at the chamber and discussed. And I just want to share with everybody that this is recorded. Please give us a couple days to get it up on the website as well as the slides. And I encourage you can get a hold of me, but as Chris has mentioned several times, please feel free to contact him directly. Chris, thank you very much. And everybody, thanks for attending, and please tune in to see our future webinars and look at our website. We're now offering customized training as well. Enjoy your day, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.